Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we'll be talking all about buy-to-let properties in the UK. So a buy-to-let property, also known as a BTL, has become a popular investment strategy for a lot of people in the UK. Now if you're a beginner and you're just starting out, or maybe you're already an experienced property investor, or you have assets in other financial markets, it's important that everybody needs to know the ins and outs of buy-to-let property before they make the decision of getting into it. In this video we'll be discussing everything you need to know about buy-to-lets, from the advantages, the disadvantages and the cost involved, so let's jump into it. So the first thing you might be thinking to yourself is, Josh, what even is a buy-to-let property? Well, put simply, a buy-to-let property is a property that you purchase with the intention of renting it out to somebody else, i.e. a tenant, which provides a monthly income. Investing in buy-to-let properties in the UK has a number of benefits. First and foremost, it allows the investor to achieve that steady monthly income which comes with the tenants paying rent every month. Additionally, with the right management strategies in place, these buy-to-let properties will involve little to no work from yourself, making this income totally passive. As the landlord and the owner of the property, you also have the opportunity to increase your rent over time, which increases the profitability in the long term. The great benefit of investing in buy-to-let in the UK, and also investing in property in general, is that we also benefit from capital appreciation of the underlying asset. Now, historically in the UK, housing prices have risen over time, and on average, over the last 50 years, property prices have doubled every 10 years. So what this means is, as well as our monthly rental income, which is a profit for the landlord, over time, so if we buy a property and hold it for 20, 30 years, we can expect the value of the house to rise, and then when we sell the property, we benefit from the difference. Investing in buy-to-let properties also introduces a degree of diversification into our investment portfolio. For example, at the moment you may only be invested heavily in stocks and shares of an individual company, or you might be invested heavily into your workplace pension. But also, by investing in property, you're adding a different asset class into the mix, which means that overall you reduce your liability to market downturns, which increases chance that you're going to get a profitable return over time. So location is arguably the most important factor when choosing a buy-to-let property, and simply this is because properties in prime locations will be able to attract more tenants, and therefore you'll be able to command higher rents. In my experience, you want to look at cities with a high population of transient people. By this I mean people who are going to be in the area for the short term and may not be looking to buy property for themselves to live in the long term. So think of cities with high student populations, they're only going to be there for 3-4 years for their degrees, or city centres when you have working professionals on 1 to 2 year job contracts. Another good one is looking for places near hospitals and other medical facilities where you have staff members who again are only there for a year or two before rotating to another hospital or another facility. The type of property you choose as a buy-to-let investment is also very important. For example, a 2 to 3 bedroomed house, family house to rent out, might achieve a higher rent than, say, a studio or a 1-bedroom flat. However, we need to take into consideration that the bigger the property, the more maintenance fees, the more repair fees, ongoing management costs, etc., etc. So therefore, the most profitable property may not be the biggest overall. The age and condition of the property that you choose for as an investment is also really important, as it directly affects the rental potential. So houses that are well maintained and well cared for will attract more tenants and therefore higher rents per month. And you think about to your own personal experiences, and I know I've experienced this before in the past when I've gone to look at a house to rent when I was a student, and you've gone in the house, the wallpaper's hanging off the walls, the gardens are overgrown. It just makes you not want to rent that place. Whereas on the other hand, you go to those nice looking properties, they're well maintained, the carpets are nice, it's painted nicely, the kitchen's in a good order. As a tenant, that's the things that you look for. Lastly, it's crucial to understand the local market conditions when investing in buy-to-let properties. This is because properties that are already in well-established high rental areas will fetch a higher sell price than similar houses in areas with a lower rental demand. So again, it might be worth spending that extra £10,000-15,000 and buying a property in those well-established rental areas rather than taking a risk on a cheaper house in an area with lower rental demand. But again, this is all decided by your appetite to risk. Personally, for me, I'd rather pay that little bit more and get some sort of protections, knowing that there's always going to be tenants willing to rent my property, rather than opting for that cheaper house, getting it cheaper overall, but then running the risk of, high tenant turnover, increased vacancy periods and lower rents. However, guys, like with any investment, there are some downsides to buy-to-let properties. It's important we also take these into consideration, and it allows us to make an informed decision, and you can choose whether this path is right for you. One of the biggest disadvantages, guys, is the maintenance and repair costs of being a landlord and running a buy-to-let portfolio. Now, maintenance repair costs are the absolute bane of any landlord's life, and it's something I personally don't like as a property investor. But unfortunately, as the owner, you are ultimately responsible for the upkeep of your property, ensuring that the tenants are safe and comfortable. These maintenance and repair costs can be really, really expensive, and they start sometimes even before the tenant moves in, especially if you've bought a property that's a little bit worse for wear and needs a bit of work doing before making it up to that standard that you want your tenant to live in. You'll also have monthly ongoing maintenance and repair costs, which just come with the territory. It comes with general wear and tear of the property. So you've got your leaky taps, your leaky sinks, your tenants phoning you up that the shower's broken, you need to put a new one in, or the boiler's gone. So these are just costs that you can't escape as a landlord. Now, the silver lining in regards to the ongoing maintenance and repair costs is that you can mitigate that by doing a lot of the work yourself, which is what I personally do. So, for example, if one of my tenants needs a new tap fitting, or they've locked themselves out, or the carpet needs replacing, or the laminate floor needs replacing, I feel comfortable doing that myself and saving the costs. However, when it comes to the bigger things like the boiler installations, the boiler repairs, anything electrical, any serious plumbing work, you definitely need to get the professional tradesmen, the professional handymen to do that for you. The only other thing to consider if you're doing the cost yourself is that an argument could be made is that these passive income streams are no longer passive, right? Because you're having to spend some of your time, some of your free time to go to these properties and do the work. Another big problem with being a buy-to-let landlord is just the sheer amount of tenant problems that you'll face. And these problems, that they're time-consuming and they're stressful to fix. So, for example, if the boiler breaks in the middle of the night, you can definitely expect a call or a text from your tenant waking you up saying that the boiler's broken, when can it be fixed, when will they have the heating back on, etc. Or maybe you're renting one of your properties to two working professionals and now they're not getting along, so now you have each person messaging you complaining about the other person, for example. These are very real possibilities with being a landlord, and like I said, it's just time consuming and stressful, and it's maybe not something that you want to get yourself into. Some of these issues with tenants can be mitigated via using a professional management service. So a management company, they'll do a lot of the day-to-day admin on your behalf. So the tenant will contact the management agency directly with any problems. Then the management agency will either deal with it directly or come to you for the final say, i.e. what repairs need to be done. The only problem with the management company is that they are quite expensive. In my experience, they can range anywhere from 5 to 15% of your monthly rental income. So, for example, if you're charging £1,000 per month in rent, the management company will want roughly £100 per month to save it a 10% fee plus any VAT on top. Another major disadvantage and another cost that we need to consider when getting into buy-to-lets, and it's something that I mentioned earlier on the video, is this notion of vacancy periods. So again, guys, this comes with the territory of being a landlord, because it's very unlikely that you're going to manage to keep all your rental properties tenanted every month, every year, for the foreseeable future, and however long you want to hold the investment for. Renters, they're very unlikely to stay in your rental property forever. They might move to a different place, they might move out to buy their own properties, so this is just a cost that you're going to need to absorb. So with any vacancy period, your rental income for the month is cut off, so you're no longer receiving that income. But as a sweetener to the deal, you're still liable to pay things such as council tax, right? So you can make an argument that it's a double negative, because you're not getting that rental income, and also you're paying out of your own pocket to keep up with that council tax. Now, the good thing about vacancy periods is there is potential to mitigate these costs, and we can do this by signing up tenants to longer tenancy agreements, so 1 year, 2 years. So basically this contract's the tenant, they're agreeing that they'll rent that property for 1 to 2 years. So this is good because it cuts down on the amount of vacancy periods rather than having that sort of like rolling 1 month tenancy where tenants only need to give it a month's notice before they move out, and it can leave you a bit in the lurch where you have to look for a tenant last minute. However, you have to be aware that signing up that tenant for a fixed price for 1 or 2 years gives you less flexibility to increase the rent in the long run. So just say you sign up a tenant for 2 years at, let's just say £1,000 per month. But then 6 months into that tenancy, there's a massive increase in rents in the local area, and the average rent for that property otherwise would be £1,500. It's very, it's usually contracted that would be £1,000 a month for the tenant. And it's very difficult to raise that rent again to £1,500 to keep in line with the market. The final major disadvantage of buy-to-let properties are interest rates. So obviously the majority of buy-to-let investors will use a product called a buy-to-let mortgage, and obviously this is affected by the Bank of England interest rates, and mortgage repayments per month are based off this interest rate. Now this is quite topical at the moment because, as you probably heard, the Bank of England has raised the interest rate to 4% as of the beginning of February, so it's cutting into a lot of landlord profits at the moment. The increased costs associated with interest rate fluctuations can be mitigated by passing those costs directly along to the tenant via increasing the amount of rent they pay per month. And this is what a lot of UK landlords are doing at the moment, and it's also being seen across Europe and in America. The only thing that we need to consider with this is that we need to remain competitive in the rental market. So for example, if the new proposed rental increase for your property is similar to that of another property which may be in a more desirable location or bigger property, all you're going to do is price yourself out of the market because the tenants are going to rent that other person's property and not yours. So that concludes today's video on buy-to-let properties in the UK. I hope you found this information useful, and I hope you learned something new. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll definitely get back to you. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see similar content from myself, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It really helps me out. I also really enjoy making this type of content, and I've got some exciting videos in the pipeline I don't want you to miss out on. Thanks, and see you next time.